I wasn't supposed to remember anything from that day. But I do. Every single detail. The hallway smelled like lemon wax and secrets. I had just finished mopping the marble floor when I looked up and saw it. A large, overframed portrait, hanging right at the end of the corridor. A man, a woman, and a little girl. It was the girl who made me drop the bucket. She couldn't have been more than 7. Brown hair, pale skin, and a red dress with a white collar. Her face was too familiar. Too much like mine. Not now. I'm old and faded. But exactly how I looked in the only photo I ever had of myself as a child. The photo that was taken from me in the orphanage. I stared at the painting for what felt like hours. I forgot the mop, the gloves, the cleaning checklist. Everything around me faded. The girl's eyes were pulling something out of me, something I had buried for decades. I should have walked away. I should have pretended it was a coincidence. But there was something about the woman in the painting too. Something in the way she placed her hand on the child's shoulder. That hand, I had dreamed of it once, pressing gently against my back as I cried in the dark. It made no sense. I had never been in this house before. I was just the cleaning lady hired through an agency. This was supposed to be just another job. Rich people, empty rooms, invisible work. But the moment I saw that painting, everything changed. I moved closer, slowly. I wanted to believe it was just my imagination. But then I saw the girl's necklace. A tiny silver heart, barely visible beneath the collar. My hand instinctively reached for my chest. For the scar I've had since I was 6, the one left by a broken pendant chain. That necklace was mine. My legs trembled. My heart started pounding in my ears. Louder than the ticking clock above the grand staircase. I clung to the wall for support. My rubber gloves squeaking against the polished wood. I wasn't just cleaning this house. I was walking through my past. And the walls. The walls had been watching me all along. I didn't finish my shift that day. Not properly, at least. I pretended to feel dizzy, though it wasn't a lie. My head was spinning, my chest tight. The image of that necklace haunted me all the way home. Back in my tiny apartment, I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the old drawer where I kept the few belongings from my childhood. I opened it with trembling hands. There, beneath a yellowed envelope and a button from a coat I no longer owned, was the photo. The only photo. Me, at maybe 6 or 7. Hair combed, expression unsure. A red dress. A silver heart necklace. It wasn't identical to the one in the painting. It was the one. I knew every scratch, every dent. I clutched the photo to my chest and cried for the first time in years. Not just tears of confusion, but of something deeper, something close to grief. Or perhaps the realization that I'd been robbed of something I never knew I'd lost. That night, I couldn't sleep. My memories from before the orphanage were foggy. Disjointed pieces. A lullaby hummed by a woman I couldn't name. A warm scent like jasmine and old wood. A tall staircase, the kind that curved. I never understood where those memories came from or if they were dreams. But now I was beginning to suspect they were real. The next morning, I returned to the mansion, trying to act normal. I kept my head down, my steps quiet. But I couldn't stop glancing at the corners. The frames, the shadows of the house. Every room seemed to hold a whisper. That's when I noticed something strange. On the bookshelf in the study, among leather-bound volumes and dust, a thin blue children's book stood out. I pulled it gently. It wasn't part of a set. Its spine was frayed, its cover faded. But the title? Clara and the Golden Tree. Clara, my name. I hadn't heard that title since I was a little girl. It was my favorite book. I used to fall asleep listening to it being read aloud. Before everything went dark, my fingers trembled as I opened the cover. Inside, in soft, looping handwriting, was a message. To my little sunshine. Never stop dreaming, Mama. The room seemed to collapse inward. The air turned cold. My eyes burned. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but there was no one to ask. How did this book get here? Why did the portrait show me? And most of all, why did my own mother live in this house, while I grew up in an orphanage? I was supposed to be vacuuming the main hall. That's what the schedule said, and that's what I pretended to do. But my mind wasn't in that machine. It was upstairs in that painting, in that book, in that handwriting. It was in the echo of the word mama, scrawled inside the cover of a book I hadn't seen in 60 years. It was in the way my name had stared back at me. Clara. My name. I hadn't heard anyone say it like that since I stopped believing someone out there was still searching for me.com. That day, I did something I had never done in my decades of cleaning other people's houses. I wandered. I climbed the stairs, those same curved stairs from my dreams, and reached the second floor. Then the third. Each step creaked like a warning, but I ignored them. At the end of the hallway was a narrow wooden door. Not decorative like the others. Small, unassuming, locked. I hesitated, then checked the hallway again. No one. My heart raced as I remembered the small basket of keys in the laundry room downstairs. I had seen it earlier while putting away towels. Without fully understanding why, I went back and returned with the bundle. 15 keys. Only one fit. The attic door groaned open like it hadn't moved in years. Dust exploded into the air, and a thin beam of sunlight pierced through a cracked window. I coughed and stepped inside, ducking under the low ceiling. The smell was overwhelming: old wood, forgotten cloth, and something bittersweet, like memories. Boxers were stacked to the ceiling, most covered in sheets. A rocking horse stood in the corner, motionless but heavy with presence. On a small wooden shelf, I saw a row of dolls. One of them had a red ribbon in her hair, the same ribbon I remembered crying over when it got lost. That was my doll. I stepped closer, and my foot knocked something metal on the floor. A small box. I crouched and opened it with trembling fingers. Inside, letters, dozens of them. Yellowed, fragile, some unopened, all addressed to the same person, Señora Isabel Ventura. Ventura. That name struck me like lightning, because I had seen it before. When I was 7, just before the adoption papers were signed at the orphanage, I peeked at the file they tried to keep from me. It mentioned one name under previous inquiry. A woman who came searching for a girl named Clara. The name was scratched out. Ventura. The paper was taken from my hands before I could ask anything. They said it didn't matter, that it was a mistake. But mistakes don't write bedtime notes in children's books. Mistakes don't hang your portrait in a golden frame. Mistakes don't lock away letters in an attic, sealed with silence. I sat there in the dust, the letters trembling in my hands, my pulse louder than my thoughts. I hadn't just found a room full of memories. I had found proof. Proof that someone had loved me, and someone had lied. I sat on the attic floor for what felt like hours. The letters in the box were wrapped in a silk ribbon, now brittle with age. Each envelope was labeled with date, spanning from 1965 to 1972, my childhood years. The years I had spent believing I was alone. I opened the first one carefully. The paper cracked at the folds, but the ink remained vivid. The handwriting was elegant, but shaky. To whoever finds this, my daughter's name is Clara. She disappeared from my arms. On a rainy night, I have tried to forget, but never could. If anyone finds her, tell her I never stopped searching. Never. Not even when they told me she was gone for good. I blinked rapidly, trying to force back the tears. My throat burned. Another letter was addressed directly to me. Clara, if you are alive, and if by some miracle you find this place, know this. I was forced to let you go. They said you were too sick to survive, that I should sign the papers and move on. But I never did. I dreamed of you every birthday. I left your favorite book on the shelf, hoping it would find its way back to your hands. I pressed the letter to my chest and closed my eyes. It wasn't abandonment. It was theft. Someone had taken me from her. Someone had decided I didn't belong. And for decades, I had believed them. Suddenly, the silence in the attic was unbearable. I stood up and walked back to the door, gripping the letter like it was the only thing keeping me alive. As I stepped back into the corridor, I heard a voice below. A deep, calm voice, masculine. "Are you done upstairs?" I froze. I hadn't realized the owner of the house had returned. I cleared my throat. "Yes, sir. Just finished." He didn't see the letter in my pocket. As I walked past him down the stairs, my eyes glanced at him briefly. He was older than me. Gray hair, sharp features, and a look in his eyes that felt oddly familiar. My heart stopped. Was this him? Was this the man from the portrait? I didn't ask. Not yet. I couldn't. The fear of the truth was as strong as the need for it. Instead, I nodded politely and walked out the door with the letter clutched to my chest like a stolen treasure. That night, I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I spread the letters out on my bed like puzzle pieces. Some were addressed to orphanages, others to private investigators. None were ever mailed. They were all drafts. Desperate attempts to say something no one ever let her say. That's when I realized. She must have been silenced. The next morning, I returned to the mansion with a plan, though I wasn't sure what I'd do if it worked. I needed answers. Not more whispers in the attic, not dusty letters hidden behind old trunks. I needed someone to admit what they had done. I started by looking for the housekeeper, the one who had been working there forever. As the agency told me, Mrs. Livia, sharp eyes, tightly pinned hair, and a habit of always knowing more than she said. I found her in the kitchen, polishing silver with a cloth that barely moved. I asked, carefully, if she'd known the woman who used to live there. The lady of the house, Isabel Ventura. Her hands paused for a second. Just enough. Then she nodded. Of course. A tragic woman. Died years ago. Never the same after the accident. What accident? Her eyes narrowed slightly. The kind you don't talk about. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. That was all I needed. She knew something. I returned to the attic on my next break. This time, I took my phone and started photographing everything: the letters, the book inscription, the broken necklace I had found in a velvet box behind the dolls. I wasn't going to let this get buried again. That's when I noticed a small photo album wedged between the floorboards. Inside were candid pictures, a little girl playing in the garden, laughing in a bubble bath, sleeping on her mother's lap, and in every photo, the girl wore that same silver heart necklace. In the last photo, the child was being carried by a man I didn't recognize. He wasn't in any of the portraits. He wore a dark coat and a hat pulled low, his face half hidden. But there was something cold about the way he held her. Not like a father. Not like family. On the back of the photo, in Isabel's handwriting, was a single sentence. They told me she died, but I know they took her. My skin prickled. Who were they? I turned the album upside down and out fell a folded medical form. A release paper. It was stamped by an orphanage I had tried to forget. My orphanage, and under authorized release signature was a name I would never forget. Livia Soros. The housekeeper. My blood turned to ice. The same woman still working here. Still guarding this house. Still watching me. The silence around my past was no accident. She had helped erase me. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. The name Livia Soros echoed in my mind like a bell in an empty chapel. I saw it in my nightmares, scribbled across papers, whispering through locked doors, hidden in every corner of that house. She had signed the release. She had given me away. But why? And who had given her that power? The next morning, I returned to the mansion like any other workday. My uniform pressed, gloves folded neatly in my bag. But my heart was anything but neat. It thrashed like a bird in a cage. I didn't look at her when I passed the kitchen. I couldn't. Instead, I went straight to the attic, my secret sanctuary. My war zone, the only place where the truth still had a voice. I opened the photo album again, studied the man's face in that last picture. I zoomed in, adjusted the light on my phone. Still half hidden, and then, I saw it. He was wearing a ring. Thick, gold, with an engraved initial barely visible. G. Ventura. Was he family? I didn't know, but the air shifted. Something in me knew I was closer than ever. I scanned the shelves for more clues. Most boxers were old linens, broken frames, forgotten trophies. But in the far corner, behind a suitcase covered in plastic, I noticed a small wooden chest with iron trim. It was locked. I found a rusty screwdriver and pried the latch loose. The hinges protested, but it opened. Inside was something wrapped in velvet. I unfolded the cloth carefully, and there it was. The original locket. Not the one in the painting. Not the one in the photos. But the real one, mine. I recognized the small crack at the bottom. The one I made the day I fell on the orphanage steps. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were 2 tiny photos. On one side, a younger Isabel, my mother, smiling softly, and on the other side, a baby, me. There was also a piece of paper folded and pressed into the lining of the chest. A certificate, not a birth certificate. A custody dispute? Between Isabel Ventura and a man named Gilberto Ventura. My father. I couldn't breathe. He had sued for full custody after Isabel's nervous breakdown. The report said she was mentally unfit and emotionally unstable. After losing a previous child, my brother, apparently, who had died young. Gilberto had used her grief against her, and he had won. But he didn't raise me. He put me in an orphanage, filed a medical report claiming I was terminally ill, and vanished. He had taken me not to love me, but to hurt her. I sat in that attic, surrounded by the ruins of a family destroyed by pride, vengeance, and silence. My entire life had been an echo of a war I didn't know I was born into, but now, I had the truth, and the truth was heavier than I imagined. The next day, I woke up with my hands clenched into fists, not out of anger, but out of fear. I had the proof, the locket, the letters, the court papers. All of it now sat in a small box under my bed, like a heart I didn't know how to carry. But what was I supposed to do with it? Would anyone even believe me? After all these years? And more importantly, would it change anything? As I stepped into the mansion that morning, the house felt colder. The air thicker. Livia was already in the hallway, dusting the mirror beneath that cursed portrait. The one with me in it. I didn't say a word. Not yet. I finished my morning duties in silence, but my mind was spiraling. Every creak in the floorboards, every flicker of the chandelier, it all felt like a whisper. Do it. Ask her. Show her. Demand the truth. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked into the kitchen where she was polishing a silver tray. My voice came out dry. Mrs. Livia, may I ask you something? She didn't look up. If it's about your hours, talk to the agency. It's not about the job, I said. That made her pause. I found the letters, I added, softly. In the attic. Her hand froze. I also found the custody papers, the locket, the book with my name in it. I know who Isabel was. I know she was my mother. Silence. Then she slowly set the tray down and turned toward me. There was no panic in her face, just exhaustion. I wondered how long it would take, she said quietly. You knew? I asked, almost choking. She nodded. I watched that woman fall apart, she said. Your mother, Isabel. After the boy died, she lost herself. She walked through this house like a ghost. When your father filed for custody, she didn't fight. She didn't have the strength. And you signed the papers, I said, my voice trembling. You helped take me away from her. She didn't deny it. I thought I was protecting you, she said. Your father. He wasn't cruel, but he was cold. Practical. You were sick as a baby, and he didn't think she could handle it. So he placed you somewhere he believed was safe. He abandoned me, I said. She didn't argue. I wrote her letters, Livia whispered. Tried to tell her where you were. But he intercepted them. Burned most. Hid the rest. She grew suspicious. That's why she wrote the ones you found. She knew someone had taken you. She just never found the proof. I stared at the woman who had erased me from my own story. You could have told me, I whispered. I couldn't, she said, her eyes suddenly glassy. By the time I realized what it had done to you, what it had done to her, you were already gone. I turned to leave. Clara, she called, using my name for the first time. I stopped at the door. There's one more thing you should see. I followed her. Each step down the hallway felt heavier than the last. My throat was tight. I didn't know if I wanted to scream or cry or disappear entirely. But something in her voice, something cracked and human, made me keep walking. Livia stopped in front of a narrow closet near the library. One I had passed dozens of times without noticing. She reached inside and pressed her hand against the back wall. It clicked. A false panel opened, revealing a slim wooden box tucked behind the plaster. She handed it to me wordlessly. I didn't know what I expected. More letters. A confession. Something else to crush me under the weight of my stolen past? But when I opened the box, I saw something different. A cassette tape. Labeled in faded handwriting. For Clara, if she ever finds her way home. My knees buckled. I sat on the floor right there in the hallway, holding the tape like it was the most fragile thing on earth. Your mother recorded it the year before she died, Livia said quietly. She made me promise I'd give it to you. If you ever came back. Back, I thought. I didn't even know this was mine to come back to. She brought out an old tape player from a nearby drawer, already expecting that I'd want to hear it right away. My hands trembled as I pushed the cassette in and pressed play. Then, silence. Then, a soft, static hum. And then, her voice. Clara, if you're hearing this, then God heard my prayer. I gasped. That voice, it was exactly as I remembered from those hazy early years. Gentle, warm, broken in places, but still holding so much love. They told me you were gone. That you didn't survive. But I never believed them. I knew my heart would have stopped the moment yours did. And it never did. So I waited. The tears came hard and fast. I left your book on the shelf. I kept your red dress folded in the drawer. I even left your old doll in the attic. I told myself, maybe, one day, you'd find your way back. Even if you didn't remember me, I wanted you to feel something. I wanted you to feel that you were loved. I covered my mouth, trying not to sob. And if this is the only way I can reach you, then listen closely, my sweet girl. You were never unwanted. You were never forgotten. You were never a mistake. The tape ended there. No goodbye. No closure. Just that last phrase, hanging in the air like a soft echo of everything I had needed my whole life. I looked at Livia. She had tears in her eyes, too. She loved you more than anything, she whispered. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I took the tape with me when I left that day. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel lost. I felt found. In the days that followed, I didn't return to work. I needed time. Time to breathe. Time to cry. Time to sit with the voice of a woman I had mourned without knowing. And now missed as if we'd spoken just yesterday. I listened to that tape every morning. Sometimes twice. Her voice became part of my routine, like coffee, like air. It settled in my chest, soft but strong, filling in the empty places I had carried for a lifetime. But something inside me knew. The story wasn't over yet. Not until I stood in her room. I called the agency and said I wanted to return just one final shift. They didn't question it. When I arrived at the mansion, it was quiet. Livia wasn't there. Only the hum of the old walls and the smell of lemon wax once again. I made my way up the stairs, past the painting, past the study. I opened the door to what had once been Isabel's room. It was untouched. The bed was made with a satin coverlet, the curtains drawn halfway. On the dresser, her perfume bottles still stood half full. But what caught my eye was the wardrobe. Dark, heavy, locked. I searched the drawers until I found a small bronze key inside a jewelry box. My hands didn't tremble this time. I unlocked it. Inside, hanging neatly on a wooden hanger, was the red dress. My red dress. Tiny, aged, but intact. Next to it, in a glass box, was my old doll still, with the red ribbon in her hair. The same ribbon I once cried over when I lost it in the garden. At the bottom of the wardrobe, I found a small suitcase. Inside were folded clothes, a pair of little shoes, and another envelope. Not a letter this time. A photo. It was me and her. I must have been 2 years old. Her arms wrapped around me, her face close to mine. We were sitting under a tree, both of us smiling, not posing, just being. The photo was soft around the edges, faded slightly, but full of warmth, and on the back, a single sentence written in blue ink. My reason for breathing. That's when I broke. All the pain, all the anger, all the years of feeling invisible, they shattered. Not in rage, but in something deeper. Something like forgiveness, not just for her. For me, I had spent my life believing I didn't belong anywhere, that I was an accident in someone else's story. But now I saw the truth. I had belonged. I had been loved. I had simply been taken. I placed the red dress gently over my arm and picked up the doll. Then I left the mansion with nothing else. No revenge. No confrontation. No shouting. Only the pieces of a life that had finally been returned to me. It's strange how we can spend a whole lifetime searching for something we already carry inside. After that day, I never returned to the mansion. Not because I was angry, not because I wanted to forget, but because I had found what I was meant to find. That house had served its purpose. I carried the red dress in a small box with me ever since. The doll sits now on a shelf beside my bed. And sometimes, I talk to her before I sleep. Not because I believe she answers, but because once, she was my only witness. The letters, the photos, the cassette, they're all part of a story I used to think wasn't mine. But it was, and now, it's mine to tell. I spent years in silence. Years believing I didn't matter. That I was left behind, forgotten. That the world simply spun too fast for a little girl no one came back for. But I was wrong. I wasn't abandoned. I was stolen, and still, she never stopped loving me. My mother fought in the only ways she could. With letters no one allowed her to send. With bedtime stories she recorded into silence. With dresses she kept clean and ready. With a hope that refused to die even when she did. And me? I survived. I became strong in the places they tried to break me. I became gentle in the ways they said made me weak. I became the woman who walked back into the house that held all her ghosts, and made peace with them. Now, in the quiet of my little room, I sit in this old chair and tell you my story, not for pity, but for remembrance, because maybe someone out there feels like I once did, unseen, forgotten, a mistake. So hear me when I say this. You are not forgotten. You are not a mistake. And love, real love, doesn't vanish just because it gets buried. Sometimes, it hides in attics. Sometimes, in old books. Sometimes, in the corners of memory that still feel like home. And sometimes, it waits for you to come back. Just like I did. Because in the end, I wasn't lost. I was just on my way home.